Okay, so I like doing longer intros for these, so this is going to be like the Star Wars one where we do a laboriously long intro, but it's even more relevant here because of the whole controversy surrounding this game. So it's like before we do this is not a two-game flex format day. This is like a triple header where we'll do our debate format first, then we'll do Hogwarts, then we'll do Crime Site. And I always said I hated talking about like current ongoing subjects, like because it feels so arbitrary, right? Like you could talk about J.K. Rowling and anything like that at any time, but this is like, oh, because of the game. But I guess I'll relent and do it for once. But yeah, that's what I would normally do in those formats, is I would avoid talking about current issues and topics because it just felt kind of contrived. But that is like the best way to get sort of fleeting attention. But see, that's what people do. They'll post something to like YouTube, or they'll talk about it, whatever, because it's a current event, and people interested in the current event will watch it, not because of them or how good their takes are or whatever it is. They'll just do it because the topic is current, and then as soon as it's over, they forget about it, instead of trying to do something that actually has like a long-standing idea of merit to it or whatever. But I can't even talk now because I don't do it anymore at all, so I'll take whatever relevant thing I can get. So they have a website that's like, have they played this game, which I found very amusing. So the list of all streamers who have played the game is on there, so I guess I'll be on there now too. Please add me. It's like, it's almost like the Streisand effect, where you're making something that if you don't like it, just don't buy it. And I know that sounds like too simple, but if you're that bothered by J.K. Rowling's mere existence and the fact that she owns the IP, which obviously, nothing like this would exist without her, then you personally don't have to buy it. But then people take it one step too far, where they feel like, oh, we have to stop other people from buying it and playing it. That's where you go too extreme. I've always been a fan of protesting and boycotting stuff. In fact, yeah, get the Dixie Chicks on the phone. We need them now. The old scale, like the Ja Rule. He's on the phone. How can he help us make sense of everything that's happened today? Like, we care so much about celebrities and we give them too much power in that way. J.K. Rowling's just a random author. She wrote some books. They were for kids, ironically. If there was something negative in the books themselves, just like with this, if there's something actually negative in the game, whether transphobic or whatever, right, that would be different. But don't you think that the developers would be smart enough to know, like, even if for whatever reason they feel like they have the same views as her, even, let's say, that wouldn't mean that they'd be stupid enough to put it in the game. So just the same way, like, oh, now people will go back and cherry pick and try to say, like, oh, here's where the books were, such and such, because she's this way now. It's almost like the Hans Niemann thing, where because he cheated online, now people want to go back to games he played years ago over the board in tournaments and say, oh, he must have cheated there because his accuracy was higher than Bobby Fischer, or this or that. They didn't say that then when he played the game, but now they want to go back. So it's the same thing with her. Now they'll go back to even the books or the movies and say, oh, here's where it was so horrible, or here's where it had this bias and this and that, even if nobody said that at the time and parents were comfortable with having their kids read the books and there was no talk of it then. So at least you can separate art from the artist and say, you can hate her, you can disagree with her views, etc., but that has nothing to do with the books. That has nothing to do with the movies. I've only seen the first two movies, Sorcerer's Stone or The Philosopher's Stone, but then they changed the name because they felt like it wouldn't go over as well in other markets and audiences. So I think it was released originally as The Philosopher's Stone in the UK. And of course, we know how much I like Full Metal Alchemist, so that was a big plot point in there. It's called The Philosopher's Stone, so apparently they didn't care as much in translating that over, like whether that would sell in the Western markets and stuff. I guess it's not called that in the name, but still. Yeah, I've only read the first book, and that was a long, long time ago. Only seen the first two movies, so I almost try to avoid doing series like this if it's something, because I feel like, oh, it might spoil things or it might ruin things if I eventually do get to that. But I don't know where it would even take place, like time wise. It should be like just after the series, before the series. I doubt you'd really be interacting with, I don't know how they would really make sense of it. Like, you're not going to play as a major lore character, right? I assume you'll play as like a generic person in the universe who can choose to do whatever. Yeah, like let's think about this a little more in detail. Like with whether it's J.K. Rowling, because okay, she tweeted some things that people thought were transphobic and this and that. I'm sure I looked at them in the past, but ignoring the specifics of it for a second, like let's just assume okay, she tweeted some very bad, terrible things, right? Then we get to let's think about people in the current modern sphere, right? Kyrie Irving, who said, "Oh, the Earth is flat," or whatever else he said. He didn't want to get the vaccine. Like okay, people with objectionable views, and then Kanye West, who said what he said on the Alex Jones show, okay, anti-Semitic things, things like that. Alex Jones himself, who said controversial things, Sandy Hook, etc. So we're laying out all these people who have said objectionable, questionable things. But we can separate in at least most of those cases. I guess it's harder to do with Alex Jones because that's his whole shtick is he just says controversial things all the time. Although he has been right about a number of things too. So even then, we can separate individual ideas from the individual. If he says something like the gay frog thing was actually accurate, where there was actually a study in 2000 or even before where chemicals were affecting the reproductive capabilities and etc. Of frogs. So that was a true thing. It got memed on pretty hard, but that is factually, objectively correct take by Alex Jones. So we can separate that one individual idea and say he was right about that, and then he's wrong about a plethora of other things. So with Rowling, we can do the same thing. Like, okay, she's a great writer. She's, one of the richest authors in history, billionaire, very successful book and series and movies. And what impresses me most from the outset of that too is like it's not like oh it was a one-hit wonder and a fluke and then she just retired. Imagine she wrote so many sequels and they were all so well received and all so successful, and the movies as well. So that's a lot harder to do. If you told me like oh write one best-selling book like the first one in the series, okay, maybe you could do it. Could you write 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 7? That's 10 times harder. It's almost like they got better as they went along, although again I haven't read them so I can't say that. But and I also like these series just that have longevity where they're written for a young audience at the beginning, but then they go on so long that the characters almost grow up with the audience, right? So then it becomes much more mature, because I know like Deathly Hallows and stuff, it starts to get a lot more dark and disturbing and mature in content, at least. Just because of the longevity of the series. That wasn't her intent, I'm sure, at the beginning, but it certainly had a good lifespan. So yeah, looking at all those people, it's like Kyrie Irving. You can appreciate how good he is at basketball and not care about him personally, because you know who he is because of his basketball acumen, not because of his personal views, right? So sometimes we bump up the LeBron James, whoever it might be. We bump up these people because they're celebrities, but it's like if you're good at one thing, so like in his case, okay, you're good at a sport, like shut up and dribble, the kind of thing. But it's not even shut up and dribble. It's like they can say whatever they want, but as the public, it's this cult of personality thing. Why does a person being good at one thing, whatever that might be, writing, playing a sport, etc., make you care about what their opinion is any particular amount? And there was an interesting exchange one of my friends had was in some YouTube comment. He was saying it's like we need to look in the mirror as a society if we value what celebrities think, professional athletes think, whatever, about social issues. Why should that be the metric we use? And then somebody else says, oh, so you're saying their opinions don't matter? No, it's not that their opinions don't matter. It's that their opinions, because of their position in that field, don't matter any more than your opinion or my opinion or anyone else's opinion, right? So you should look at the merit of the idea and not just say, oh my goodness, this person's famous, so everything they say about every subject is relevant. In the case of Rowling, okay, she's an author. She wrote some fantasy books for kids about wizards, and then those resulted in making some very successful movies as well. And so, what does that have to do with her expertise on another subject, social issues and things like that? Nothing. So we shouldn't. It's not a moral argument. It's just a cult of personality argument, which of course we've trashed certain people for that same reason, who I won't name now. Those who will not be named. I have my own version of that. But the point is, it's a cult of personality problem. The fact that why do we even care what they say? They could say, by that logic, if they say the opposite, right? Like, okay, what Kanye West said. So that means if you say, the H guy, I won't even say the name in case something's taken out of context. The H guy is a bad guy. So now all of a sudden you should be a hero and everybody should love you, because if you say the opposite, everybody hates you. It's more like social Darwinism has already decided, so it's a moot point. It's redundancy. There's no point in even talking about the subject or caring about it, right? That's the Ja Rule joke. Like Kanye West said something that social Darwinism has decided years ago was a moot point. The guy is bad, it's done, it's settled. But now Kanye West, a musician who's made some good songs over the years, let's say, he says something and, oh, now we have to reassess our position. We have to change our whole worldview because Kanye West said it. Like, why do we give them that much special treatment? Like, what a shocking statement. Shouldn't we already... It's like people don't understand the concept of social Darwinism. The 99.99% of people have a certain way of thinking about that subject. So why do we care, right, what somebody else says? It's just redundant to even have that conversation again. So I would just dismiss it. Okay, cool. He's a singer. So what does that have to do with anything? It doesn't give him any special credibility on the subject. It's the same thing here. And then, yeah. So those are some good modern example of other people who you can appreciate one thing and not care about the other. And I guess the way people might extrapolate and say, well, you're giving her more money and power and stuff by doing that. But by that, that's an equal protection under the law argument. Like, everybody's equally protected under the law, right? Regardless, trans, race, etc., whatever the case may be. So even if she tried to use her money and resources and wealth and power to do something negative, to harm somebody, then she should be punished just the same as anybody else. So that's just an enforcement issue. Like, if she's getting special treatment because she's rich, or somehow getting away with it that way, that's a separate argument, which could apply to anybody, right, in a wealthy, powerful position. And it's kind of a naive thing too. Like, it's like everybody assumes everybody's perfect, and then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, they have views and ideas too of their own that we might find objectionable, which if you put the microscope on everybody, Jeff Bezos or whoever, Elon Musk, you could find the same thing. It's just like, it almost reminds me of the Trump thing. Like, they focus so much on him as if he's the only bad guy. It goes back to one of my old quotes in the format, which was kind of like, don't specify the conflict. They can be bad, but that doesn't mean only they're bad, right? Everyone else has flaws too. Everyone else could be bad too, but you don't pay as much attention to them. Somehow you get focused on just one person, right, and their idiosyncrasies, and act like, oh my goodness, everyone else is perfect, and then they finally make one mistake, or say one bad thing, or talk about personal views, and then you want to crucify them. So it's like they give everybody too much of a what would you call it? They look at celebrities like as gods, like, oh, they're such angels, and then all of a sudden, no, now they're people too, with flaws and biases just like everybody else has. And it also requires a certain lack of self-awareness that, like, oh my goodness, nobody has flaws, everybody in society is just perfect, and then, oh my goodness, one person has a flaw, so we have to just destroy them and tear down their whole career that way too. But yeah, the whole argument that, oh, you're by giving somebody money, first of all, that's sort of a settled point. Now, this is sort of a defeatist perspective, but you would say, this is perfect. This is totally what I should do too, because I'm going to be doing this all day. So what does a half-hour intro really matter? It's perfect. Like how I did the high ground thing for Star Wars, bringing back some of my great debate points. That was an awesome discussion, like how the high ground scene is so stupid, and now there's even articles how ahead of the curve is I on that. Like, Ewan McGregor and stuff didn't want, although theoretically they did that with the whole movie and every scene, how he's like laughing when he's talking about killing younglings, about Anakin killing younglings. But no, he protested that scene too. But no, the idea that giving somebody money, this is sort of a defeatist point. Like, she's already a billionaire. I don't think giving whatever portion of the money she might get from this and other things is going to make that much of a difference, right? The damage is already done. By that logic, everybody who ever bought the books and everybody who ever watched the movies, or if you do now, you're somehow culpable too, and you should feel bad for that, and you should, you should have been a better judge of character. But then people would say, how were we supposed to know, and this and that. It's almost like when you buy a book or watch a movie, you don't care about the people behind it as much. You just care about the content. Is it good or isn't it? And so what they do with that, again, if you're equally protected under the law, her being rich and successful and powerful doesn't matter, or in a free, fair society technically shouldn't matter. This is more of a societal problem then, because again, she can kick back and relax and buy her mansion and do what she wants to do with it, but she shouldn't necessarily be able to do that much harm to any people, even if she has biases against them, whatever the case may be, because, again, equal protection under the law. If she tries to use her money, etc., that way, that comes down to a legal system, a political system where she shouldn't be allowed to do that. Just because she made money doesn't mean that she can just hurt people, certain kind of people, just because she doesn't like them, right? So you're not really giving that power. Well, you should say, okay, don't vote for Kanye West is actually a good overlap here. Like how he's running for president, or at least he said he was running for president in 2024. Yeah, don't vote for them for political office then, if it's a political issue, right? After what he said. That's a great way to start your campaign. But it's the same thing with her. Don't make her your prime minister or something. But other than that, money is just money. It shouldn't be. I know people will say, oh, well, they find ways to get around accountability once they have that much power and money, but it's still kind of a bad argument, because you're saying you should have a society in which money is just money, and it's almost like political power is something else. So the best way to deal with it is just don't listen to what famous people say about subjects, period, whether it's good or whether it's bad, because unless they have expertise on the subject, who really cares? Another great example from all my film, as much as I used to review movies and love movies, is Roman Polanski. Now, Roman Polanski committed some crime. I forget what it even is, something sexual, whatever, right? But he's one of the greatest directors. He made Chinatown and Rosemary's Baby, two classic, amazing movies. So in a vacuum, you can appreciate it and say Chinatown's a great movie. It doesn't matter what he does after that. In and of itself, it's a great piece of work. In and of itself, Rosemary's Baby is a very effective piece of work. So who cares what Roman Polanski does outside of that? He might be a bad guy. He might be a bad person. Woody Allen, we know what happened with him. People are talking about Leonardo DiCaprio now dating some young girl, or Seinfeld did that too. But you can separate the art from the artist, so you can still appreciate that. It's not going to change your opinion. That would be so arbitrary, right? Suddenly a great movie is a bad movie because the guy who made it is a bad guy. That's not how it works. Or like, what was the other example? Somebody who, like O.J. Simpson. This is an excellent one. He was a Hall of Famer. He put up Hall of Fame numbers in the NFL, right? He's considered a great player. It's like if Michael Jordan goes out tomorrow and kills somebody or commits a crime, it doesn't change what they did in that particular field. I can understand why people wouldn't want to celebrate them as much or whatever, but it's objective metrics, right? He put up certain statistics. So if he broke this record, he still broke the record, right? So you can appreciate, okay, as the athlete, but obviously as a criminal, technically, in that case, he could still play stupid and say, oh, I didn't really do it, ha ha ha. But the point is, that was like the Casey Anthony discussion we had, like how shitty of a job the prosecution did was the real crime, not the crime. Because, again, I still, that was a pretty contentious, good debate, though, like where people were getting pissed because I still think the jury delivered the right verdict if you actually look at the trial and see what they saw, because of how bad of a job the prosecution actually did. With the O.J. Simpson trial, at least it's a little different. Like, okay, Judge Ito had the stars in his eyes. This is why the public trials are so shitty. He should have been disbarred as a judge after that. He did such a shitty, biased job, and he's so focused on that sort of playing to the cameras. But also the prosecution didn't do the greatest job, but really that was more like a circus clown show, and they had such a good all-star, defense team. But the point is, his records should still hold, and he's still a great player in the context of that one field, but that has nothing to do with him personally. Because if not, the alternative is anytime somebody does something bad, you tear down everything they've done before. But it's like, if you're an artist and you do something in a vacuum, it's like, oh, I really did a great job writing that book, and that book speaks for itself, right? The chess speaks for itself, whatever it might be. The Russian chess player who said something positive about Russia and the war in Ukraine, it doesn't change the moves that he made on the board. It doesn't change, the games that he played. So if he played objectively the highest accuracy game ever, it still is. It doesn't, subjective things don't change that one way or the other. And again, by that logic, that means if I play a shitty game of chess, but because I say something you agree with ideologically, oh, what a nice guy, what a regular Alex Botez over here, cult of personality that we feed into. So there is a difference that you can find there. This is the perfect way actually to fit these things in. I'm playing Harry Potter right now. I can just do as long of an intro as I want because Yeah, I'm like train wrecks, except I actually talk during the starting soon page, whereas he just goes AFK for like a fucking hour at the beginning of his streams. I don't know what that was about, but he would always like leave like a banner like this up for like 45 minutes before actually starting, which I guess is fine because people don't have to watch if they don't want to, but but yeah, you can separate those two, and even the idea that, oh, you're giving those people money. It's like, should you buy and watch Chinatown now in 2023 if you've never seen it with Jack Nicholson? Even if you know that some of that money might go to Roman Polanski's pocket, even if he's been convicted of some crime, or I don't even know the whole story, but whatever, assuming he's a bad guy, he committed some crime. Yes, you should still watch it because it's just that good of a movie. So, sometimes that's what you would say. Like it's two separate fields. Or here's a good example, like if somebody came up with a cure for cancer, but they're just the worst, most despicable person on the planet. Don't you think you would still use the cure for cancer to save lives? Of course you would, while condemning still, okay, the person who made it, because it's such an important achievement. And it's not even like this is kind of some extrapolation in and of itself. It's not like she personally made the game herself. She's not like a developer, at least as far as I'm aware, right? It's just her IP, which should go without saying. So it's amazing, like what a shock. As soon as this game was announced or any ever talked about like years back, I don't even remember hearing about it that much. It almost feels like the controversy would have helped it, right? Whether it's a good game or not, that's a totally separate issue. But it seems like it's gotten positive reviews, but I try not to even look at stuff like that because I like to just go in fresh. But yeah, it almost could have only helped it. It feels like just give it more attention. Some people might buy it just like out of spite for all the hysteria that people have had. But no, it's not like it's her game in the sense of her actually making it. So this is like a negative cult of personality argument where people always think that term is a negative in and of itself because of the word cult, but it's just a psychological tendency. But no, it's not like she personally developed the game in the first place. And like I said, I think the developers would be smart enough to try to avoid. In fact, they might even try to pander to something to try to overcorrect. So yeah, you can separate the two, and for some reason, like people go easier on companies, right? Like if it's Blizzard or if it's, EA or something, they'll do something shitty, or some of their leaders and heads will do something shitty, but then they'll say, oh, we'll just fire this person then, or we'll just sweep it under the rug. Oh, that's Blizzard just being Blizzard, doing terrible things, underpaying employees, or whatever it is. So they'll get away with it then. But if it's an individual, now it's okay. Oh, we'll attack the individual and tear their whole career down. So why aren't people as hard on major companies like that whenever some controversy happens, or now like never buy another Blizzard game again, never buy another product from EA, etc. They do all these scummy things behind the scenes. So the shield of a company is like somehow the ultimate protective thing. And even when something bad happens, they'll scapegoat one person, get rid of that one person, and then, oh, the company's just fine, right? People don't have that foresight to get as hysterical about that, apparently. or even here's a weird positive thing about it. Imagine having the guts to like, you know something's controversial, you know it's going to tear down your career or potentially hurt you in the public eye, but then you still come out and say it, regardless of what it is that you're saying, and it could be so horrible, this and that. At least they're open about it, right? How would you know? Like, again, it's assuming the positive. Everybody who's a billionaire, who's owned media companies and properties and authors and creators and stuff like this, like Christopher Nolan, he's one of the best filmmakers of all time, both screenwriter and director. I don't know what his personal views are and anything, and I wouldn't care, but you know what I mean? Like, people would just assume, oh, they must be positive, they must be okay, until he comes out and says something, He doesn't seem like the type who would be very open about things like that. His public life is his personal life is what it is. But yeah, like the Kawhi Leonard effect, like some people just don't get involved in stuff like that. But yeah, you're so open about it in a way that's kind of a good thing, not because of what you say, but because you're really outing yourself. You're not trying to hide it. So, oh yeah, if you're so anti this, you're so whatever, insert label here, at least now you're being so clear and open and passionate even about expressing it, so that anybody who disagrees can certainly choose themselves to disassociate with you and your work, and on a personal level choose like, yeah, I won't buy that product because I don't like that person. That's a personal decision you can make. So that's the beauty of it. It's actually a good thing if somebody is open about it. I'd rather them say it, right, than just hide behind the guise of a company or hide behind this sort of false, naive neutrality that everybody is given as a default. Like everybody's just good and an angel and has all these acceptable views by whatever contrived social current standard that we've established as being acceptable. Everybody just has those until proven otherwise. Until I guess I'm more cynical that way. Like I think every CEO is probably a dick. Every billionaire could be a jerk, not because they're billionaires, not a function of that, but just because most people might have some view you might disagree with. They're just people too. It doesn't make them any better. It doesn't make them any worse, but it kind of accentuates maybe their ability to whatever, like to hide it or express it or this or that. But the point being that, so many people get away with just like they're behind the scenes. You don't know who they are or you don't know anything about them. So you just assume like, what is Jeff Bezos' position on some subject, or what is some other billionaire's position on some subject? It's the rule by omission standard, right? Like you can get away with anything, just don't talk about it. Just don't say anything ever about any subject, or just like say the politically correct answer, and then it doesn't matter what you really think. You just know how it's going to be perceived, so you never say anything out of line. So that you're kind of rewarding the wrong thing there. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Like I've always been in favor of boycotts and stuff if you feel that way, but this is like a case where people take it one step further, where they're trying to force their boycott on other people, right? Who don't really give a shit, or they just don't think it's as rises to the level. Yeah, if she commits a crime using all her power and money or whatever against a certain person or group of people, that's different because, again, that's an equal protection under the law argument. It has nothing to do with buying a fucking video game that happens to involve her IP. So that's the extrapolation that I find so triggering and totally justifies my my rant. Here, what else was I gonna say? I hate doing scripted stuff, so this is why, like, I just do it improvisationally. This is kind of I've been thinking about it the last couple of days because I was planning on playing this just because I normally don't play games on release too. This is sort of a thing that the Flex format allows me to do, which is either I'll play like MMOs and stuff that I normally wouldn't play, that it's going to be a series that could take hundreds and thousands of episodes to get through because how slow and methodical I am. And so I just play it as a one-off experience. I got from level 1 to 5 in my permadeath 1 to 60 hunter playthrough in WoW, and then I just, that's just one episode. Now I may come back, I might not, but I just kind of left it hanging, which is something I don't like to do. I like to be super thorough about it. Or on the flip side, something like this when it first comes out, I normally don't play games like that right away. I like to save them and savor them, but now I can just try it once and then continue it maybe some other time. It is kind of difficult for me though, because I am so obsessive. Like when I start something, I do want to go through with it, especially if I like it. So yeah, that was also something I said about boycotting, I think years ago, was I really wish I saved some more of my clips and stuff. But I guess I can just extrapolate a little bit from memory. Like, boycotting should come from the lowest level, not from the highest level. It's sort of like this funny analogy. So what you're saying is, in order to keep these bad, big, multi-billion-dollar corporations or people in check, we need to empower another very powerful entity like the government to be able to keep them in check. So the reason why we need to hold the companies and individuals in check is because they're so powerful, and whenever people have power, they do bad things. Meanwhile, let's turn a blind eye to the very fact that in order to do that, we're giving this other very powerful entity and group of people a ton more power to be able to, so we ignore it on that side, right? There was like this exact dialogue exchange that I posed, like one person talking to another, right? Like, so what you're saying is, we need to empower the government to keep corporations in check, because corporations are so powerful, and whenever people have that much power, they tend to do bad things, right? And they're like, yes, sure, exactly, you really get it. And then you're like, but what about the government that the same exact problem of power applies to? Oh, I don't really get it. Like there was some little skit to go with it, but that's the point. It's like you're empowering one to punish the other. It should come from the lowest level, so you should feel like, if you personally don't want to do it, like that's why the consumer has all the power and they don't realize it.
Like, just don't buy iPhones, just don't use Facebook, just don't do something if you feel that way. But not only do people still do it, but then they feel like the only way to get people to stop is to pressure and force them and say, oh, if you use this thing, you should get fired from your job or something. That's taking that really is making you feel like you're at the mercy of the product rather than it being at your mercy. It's like people not understanding their own power. And in a certain sense, it's not the company's fault either. Like, if you had the chance to make a Harry Potter game or movie or something yourself, why wouldn't you do it, right? And you're just trying to make it the best game as possible, presumably, as you can. And so then people extrapolate and say, oh, that not only is it the company's fault for making the game, not only is it Twitch's fault for letting people broadcast it, not only is it your fault for playing it and streaming it, but it's also, like they're extrapolating so far. You shouldn't have even made the game because, oh, it's associated with that horrible person who said that horrible thing. But then they always want to pass the buck to the next person. So then these big companies feel pressure, like, okay, we have to maybe not allow people to. And I love that. I checked the category the other day before the game even came out, never mind, and over 1 million people were watching it. So evidently, whatever, wasn't very successful. But like the attempts to stop it. But no, I'm always in favor of doing it on a personal and a civil level rather than saying, oh, these big multi-billion-dollar corporations who clearly wouldn't have incentives of their own, or they wouldn't just do it for cynical reasons. They have to step in and be activists and stuff, right? On one hand, the sort of the meme, like, oh, on one hand you say tax the rich and this and that, and corporations are so evil and bad and terrible, and then on the other hand you say let's allow those same corporations to be like political activists and try to fight for the causes we believe in. Don't you see something wrong with that picture where it's sort of like your interests might overlap for a while, they might align, and you think, oh, it's good that they're doing that, but then as soon as that cause is no longer useful to them, they throw it under the bus and now they'll go on to the next thing. So that's what you have to be careful about. I kind of just do this for myself because I like to do these long. It adds such a nice context to everything, because especially with this. So now if people want to talk shit while I'm actually playing, then I'll just say, go watch the intro, the hour-long intro, and then we can talk, right? The long-form postulate engaged yet again in all its glory. That's some real-life magic right there. Before, right? Because you can't cherry pick me, dude. That's what I mean. Like I'm everything is in long form. So I even defended like the Botez Dubai thing. Like you gotta see it in the full picture. It doesn't mean that they're saying some like, oh, they're saying the S word is good or whatever. I won't even, see, that's how I avoid it too. Like I won't even say what it is. Kanye West said something about the H guy. So you can't. So even if I'm just directly quoting him, like the AI Seinfeld thing too, he's joking about it. That's exactly what he says too. Like, if I was to tell this joke hypothetically about this subject, people wouldn't laugh and they would leave, and so that's the joke. I'm joking about making the joke that would be so distasteful that would cause people to leave and to not laugh. That's even the way he frames it. So an AI is doing wrong think in a hypothetical joke format, and that's what we're worried about in 2023. Let's see. So ultimately, yes, it's not Rowling's fault, it's not the developer's fault, it's not Twitch's fault, it's not the player's fault, the streamer's fault. It would be your fault for watching in the first place. That would be the solution. Just don't watch them, or more to the point, just don't buy the game. And again, of course, if something in the game itself has that issue, I would assume they're smart enough not to include anything like that, even if they wanted that. So yeah, it's part of the naive perspective that everybody's, like perfect, and then they finally say something and you're like, oh my goodness, this celebrity is a human being too, with flaws and biases and this and that. What a crazy thought, and then you tear everything down. It's like you live in a bubble where you think, I don't know, just everything is perfect, and then the smallest thing can just cause it to pop. And social Darwinism is such a powerful thing there. It's almost like on a deeper level, like, should people be allowed to say such things? Should people be banned from some of these sites for saying them? But the point is, if social Darwinism is what you think it is, like you think your opinion is right, and 99.9% of people will agree with you, right, and disagree with them, not only is it not furthering what their cause would be or like what their ideology is, but it actually has the opposite effect, right? My old opposite interpretation idea, like you could show Clockwork Orange example too. You could show somebody the most repulsive thing ever, or say the most repulsive thing ever, and 99% of people will be repulsed by it. 1% of people will be maybe emboldened by it and feel like, oh yeah, that's I like that thing. What an amazing thing. But the point is, then it's still not the fault of the speaker as much, because if that 1% of people, if all it took is somebody saying that to make them do it or make them, feel that way, evidently the problem is themselves, right? They're mature enough to take children out of it, but they're mature enough to be able to decide for themselves. So if all it takes for you to do something horrible or think something horrible is for somebody to say it, right, I still wouldn't blame the speaker, I'd blame the person. So that's where social Darwinism is. Like Kanye West says something about the H guy, and now, oh my goodness, we got to change our view now because Kanye West said it. An expert on history and all such subjects. Instead of just recognizing, for example, the simple fact that in social Darwinism, it's more along the lines of how could I say it? It should be more like, not only would that not help their cause, forget about them as the individual even, and their intellectual property and stuff, but even that topic, people will hear it, and not only will they not agree with it, they'll be more repulsed and pushed to the other side by hearing it. So again, that's why words are in this vacuum objectivity never harmful, because if you say something that the vast majority of people are not going to agree with, they're still not going to agree with it. So you being able to say it doesn't do anything. And again, at most, it would just reveal and expose the people who do believe it. So that's almost doing a service. That's almost a good thing, right? Not only are you outing yourself, but you're outing other people. Then people can choose not to associate with them or whatever they want to do. But that's almost a better way to look at it. Not only would you not be bothered by what that hypothetical person is saying, controversially, but it's not going to accomplish anything. Or if it does, then you're basically just saying that, oh, everybody's just bad for, thinking the same thing too, which you can't just magically change that then. Let's see, what else? I made some like vegetarian analogy, I think. I forgot what it was. Like, you could be the best chef, right? Oh, yeah. It was like this. You could be the best chef in the world, right? And let's say somebody's a vegetarian. So they're like, they still eat your food. They still love your food because you're so good. So you're being valued for your talent and your merit, even if they know you also cook meat on the side, or you also cook meat as part of your restaurant and your repertoire. So it's like, oh, we should boycott this restaurant because we're vegetarians, instead of we should only eat vegetarian dishes at this restaurant and still reward the quality and the merit, like I said, if you're the best chef or a great chef. Meanwhile, we can just choose not to eat those meat dishes, not that, oh my goodness, the fact that they cook them offends our being so much that we'll just tear the whole place down, metaphorically, and just not go there in the first place. Of course, if you feel that strongly, that's their prerogative, but that should never be the standard base position, the universal position, right? So you can dislike something, but you can still appreciate the ability that goes into it, or choose preferentially something else. And then I like the new version of the Ja Rule bit. I wonder if Dave Chappelle has actually done something like that, where, oh my goodness, a celebrity says something, now we have to just rethink everything we've thought our whole lives, or something that 99% of people have thought this whole time. But because J.K. Rowling says it, because Kanye West says it, because Kyrie Irving says it, now we have to all lose our minds, instead of just saying, okay, we just don't agree with that. We didn't think that before, we don't think it now, so who cares? That would be my celebrity response. So again, it's giving the celebrities that bloated cult of personality thing, that because of what they've done in one very specific, very closed, insular field, they wrote a book, they made some music, they played basketball, whatever, now all of a sudden everything they say about every subject is just the most important thing ever. Whether positive or negative. Okay.
So now I'll take a little break. That was a good adequate intro, and then we'll do a short proper intro for the game itself, which of course I have kept myself pretty much in the dark about it. Pretty much I just know about the controversy stuff and the fact that I guess it's gotten relatively positive reviews, and also the fact that what do you call it? Oh, like maybe it's supposed to be like an open world type of thing. I guess I'll think about that later, but like and do a proper intro. Like it'll be like Shadow of Mordor, where even if it's not faithful to the universe. Yeah, that's my biggest question: is like how will it fit into the timeline? Will it be before the events of the story, after the events of the story, maybe during? Will you actually be able to fight Voldemort or something? It wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense, but we'll see.